One big joke. It's a fucked up world. Here we are in. I ain't going nowhere.
Ah, she still talks. Hey, been a long time since I heard you to say "fuck you." Stop talking.
This is not a positive welcome back.
No, it's not. I should leave all this in too, since we're just starting back.
Yeah, I got to pause there for a second because I realized I needed to raise the volume up.
It's fine. We're totally unprofessional here. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Reason Reborn podcast. I am here with my lovely co-host, the vivacious cardiac Kardashian. How are you doing?
Much better now that I dropped Kanye's ass and got with a champ.
You got with a psycho.
That joke fell flat because I couldn't remember the other guy's name. That's sad.
No, it's fine. You don't really need to remember Pete Davis's name because he's a psycho too. Pete Davidson, he's okay, but he's kind of a psycho. By the way, folks, before I go in on this rant of Pete Davidson, just to let you know, we've been gone for a while. Been a lot of stuff going on with me, myself personally. It's not this man's fault as usual. He's been stellar and perfect, and all of that. Willing, and I have just been in a mess of a bunch of stuff that has kind of thrown me off. So don't blame him, blame me. It's all my fault. We'll blame him later when the show quality sucks or something like that. But for now, he holds no blame. So apologies for the super long break, especially since we missed a lot of stuff. Honestly, kind of glad, because the world has been breaking me anyway with all the bullshit that's been going on. Like the Kanye shit, with like people going back and forth and arguing about him and Pete Davidson and all that stuff, and how like she's toxic and he did nothing wrong, even though he's dating somebody who looks like his ex-wife, and he moved next door to her and shit like that. Like, that's not creepy at all, is it?
I would just say, and it's just kind of proven because you already forgot the guy's name. I wasn't paying attention to any of that. So what you're saying is like all news to me. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
It was like, my timeline is always filled with like bullshit drama, especially celebrity or even minor celebrity bullshit drama. Like that tweet I sent you the other day from the gamer, which we'll get into what he was talking about, but the guy talking about Elizabeth Warren's reaction to the Leak Road thing. It's like, I always like have that shit on me because people I know are super into that shit. And it's like, it's kind of funny because they be so bewildered why I don't give a fuck and why I don't want to see that shit. And I'd be so bewildered why they feel like they need to indulge in the stupidity and the ignorance. But it does lead to some interesting topics like the Kanye thing, where recently I just saw like why Pete Davidson is a psycho. And basically Kim Kardashian just wants to date broken, fucked up, like crazy men. Like, do you know this fool apparently not only has her name tattooed on him already, but now has her kids' names tattooed on him?
I was gonna say that's the only thing I know because you sent it to me. In her defense, though, Pete Davidson must have some kind of magic dick, because
that's the thing. Pete Davidson has that though, because think about some of the women that he's dated. Have I ever sent you the list of the women that Pete Davidson has dated?
I don't understand it. I'm not hating. I just don't understand it. Like, it is like one of the great mysteries of the universe to me. So I almost can't be mad at her because like everybody's fallen under this spell for some reason.
Like he said, Ariana Grande, like he's had Larry David's daughter. Kate Beckinsale. It's like it's so weird. But I heard two things. One, he has some type of charm to him, and two, apparently he has a big dick. So charm and a
I
big
believe
dick
the
is what
latter.
will get you over, fellas. If you want to like find you a woman, have some charm and a big dick. Can't have
I don't believe
one.
the charm part. It's
Have
got
to
to be
have
the other
both.
one. It's got to be the other one. I don't believe that.
I don't know. I mean, looking back at the whole Ariana Grande situation, I mean, she got his name tattooed on her or some shit. Like they were like head over heels. That was her biggest heartbreak. So gotta be something. I mean, that dick can't be that good. I'm sorry. But then again, maybe I don't know. I don't know.
But otherwise, Mr. Evil Davidson aside, it's good to be back. The world did not pause while we did. But
Is it good to
fine.
be back? Because we're coming back at a very fucked up time now. Like we're about to see the Dark Ages return, with us.
Okay, well, would it have been better if we hadn't left, right? I don't feel like it would have been any different.
This is true. This is true.
Is there any time to enter a building that's any good time to enter a building that's on fire? Like, not really. Not as long as it's on fire. So let's march into the flame. What do you want to touch first?
Well, I guess this is we're on the celebrity cake. You can go to like we're only going to touch on some major stuff that has happened recently while we were gone, such as the Will Smith Chris Rock incident that lit the internet on fire. And again, why do y'all follow fucking celebrities like this? And why do y'all give so much energy to this shit? Everybody knows this year's Oscars. Chris Rock was doing the set and he was making jokes. He turned his attention to Jada Pinkett and made a joke saying how like she looks like she's ready to star in G.I. Jane 2. The reference being because she had short hair, basically kind of a military cut, I guess. And if you've ever seen G.I. Jane, which how many people remember that movie? That Demi Moore, the star of the movie, had a buzz cut too. First of all, the joke wasn't good, really. Like, it's kind of I guess for that crowd it works because he's in the room of a bunch of actors. But I have to say, like, me being old, I remember G.I. Jane. How much do you remember about G.I. Jane?
I had to Google that joke. I didn't know what the fuck he was talking about.
I see that exactly.
And the only reason I Googled it is because...
Speaking of Google, let me see. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the only reason I even, aside from the fact that it blew up as a story, I just Googled it because I was like, I don't know why anybody's laughing. I don't know what that means. I was like, is that a... I just couldn't figure out the joke at all.
Let me ask you, what year were you born?
92.
Yeah, and you should know what it means. You know when that movie came out?
I don't remember. I didn't Google it.
97. You wouldn't remember. You're fucking 5. And most people of a younger age wouldn't remember. Most of us older people, that movie came and went. It wasn't like it was a standout moment in cinema history. So, like, you had to, like, really just recognize what that is to, like, get that joke. So it wasn't a good joke. Was it offensive? Not intentionally. It was offensive to Will Smith because Will Smith jumped on the stage, smacked the shit out of Chris Rock, came back and started yelling, keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth repeatedly. Everybody was shocked. The world couldn't understand what was going on. You know, Will Smith had to be taken aside by Denzel Washington, Bradley Cooper, a couple of other people. I think Tyler Perry was one of them, and calm down. And then the night got more awkward because Will Smith won the Best Actor award for King Richard and gave a speech about like violence isn't the answer, and I'm all about peace, and I'm sorry, and blah blah blah. Then he apologized. Then the shitstorm of social media dove in as people, talking about how like he needs to be kicked out of Hollywood. He's horrible. That's just awful. You can't do that to comedians. It's their job. Of course, the big brouhaha kind of stemmed from the fact that something that a lot of people either didn't know or didn't remember. Jada Pinkett has alopecia, which causes her hair loss, and why she had the short haircut. And there was all these debates about like, well, he didn't know, or even if he knew, it's not his job to know what hurts and not. He's just a comedian. Other side, Will Smith's an animal. He's a beast. He's a maniac. Basically, people talking like he needed to be put down like a rabid dog or some shit. It was just the like worst discourse about some shit that shouldn't have spawned that type of discourse. So this is social media,
I will say, since I already pointed out my ignorance about that movie, I also didn't know. Well, I'm not even trying to do what alopecia was, or that she had it, or that it caused her lack of hair. I just assumed she wanted that hairstyle. I mean, that is a hairstyle people choose. I know women who shave their heads, so it didn't really strike me as odd or interesting when I saw her. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I don't think that it was warranted that he got up on stage and slapped the shit out of him like that. Now, there may have been other stuff that's gone on because he has made jokes about her. Like he made the joke about how like this was like the year after the whole all white Oscars. Was that the hashtag that was going around? So many hashtags going around. I forget what they are.
Oscars so white
Oscars
or something.
So white, yeah. After that whole thing, and Jada Pinkett came out, was like, we need to not even bother going if this is how they're going to do us and all that. The year after Chris Rock shows up at the Oscars and was like, hey, Jada Pinkett's not here tonight, well, doesn't really matter. She don't need to be here because ain't nobody going to nominate her for nothing. Yeah. Which kind of fucked up. Yeah.
I mean, it's not nice. It's not very funny either. But
it's not. And that is funny because it started like a conversation with me and one of our friends about the idea of comics insulting people, whether or not it's still something that should be done, or is it as funny as it used to be? Because there were famous comedians, in particular Don Rickles, who you probably are like, who the fuck is a Don Rickles? Because this was even before my time, his heyday. And I literally mean before my time, because he was doing comedy before I was born. Where that was his whole thing. He would just insult people. He would go in front of a crowd, he'd point somebody out, and he'd crack jokes about their appearances or whatever. And it was all the rage. It was all the funniest shit in the world to people. But I was asking the question, do you think this is just a sign that people just don't want to hear people insult people like that anymore? Like, and take it as a joke?
I don't know if it's a shift in attitude. I think insult comedy is not as easy as I think people think it is. Like, I appreciate, the old roasts maybe Comedy Central used to do and shit like that. But like, I was listening to a little bit of Trevor Noah's set the other day at the what do you call it?
the White House Correspondents' Center.
Yeah, right. It's like it's not like the jokes were bad, but they're just kind of weak. You know, they don't really land. They're not that good. They weren't hurtful or anything, but it's like a lot of people when they do insult comedy just don't succeed. I don't know how to describe it. Like it's not quality wise that good with most people.
And it's funny. That's kind of the argument I was making to a friend, because, like I said earlier, it's a very low hanging fruit. Like you pick a flaw in somebody and you attack it in a way that you intend to be humorous. But even if your intent is not to hurt somebody's feelings, when you're attacking someone's flaws, frailties, you know, what have you, there is going to be some level of like, yeah, this kind of will hurt. Like at a roast, you know that this is their intent to do and to say something fucked up about you. And a lot of the jokes necessarily don't like personally connect with something. But though the ones that do, yeah, you probably should feel some kind of way about it because nobody likes to be made fun of. Let's be honest.
I mean, there might be that friction too, but I think having a specific target also just makes it harder to connect because nobody gives. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of people don't give a shit if you make fun of Trump. But like, and maybe this is sounding mean to me, most Trump jokes aren't that funny, and they weren't
but
at
no,
any point.
And that was my point to my friend because it's not necessarily that you're really trying to be funny. Like, let's be honest. When I say something about Trump and I crack a joke about Trump, I don't care if it's funny. I'm just trying to be a dick because I don't care for that person. You know what I mean?
Well, the reason I use that example because I haven't done it in a while, but like one of the only reasons I have Netflix is because I like to watch stand-up comedy. And I remember, all these people talk about how Trump was the gift to comedy. And I'm like, you're not right, because a lot of Trump-based comedy it got old fast because you're all doing the same fucking thing. And I can't remember a single funny joke off the top of my head, to be honest. Like it's just not very, it never was all that good. It was a little cathartic, maybe for some of you, especially early on when you were getting used to the abuse. But in terms of comedic quality, it was bad and it was lazy and it was easy and it was
and I think
the worst.
That's part of my point when I would say, like, when I say it, yeah, there is some intention to hurt because we enjoy it because we all feel the same way about this person. So fucking with this person gives you that sense of joy. You know what I mean? So yeah, it is very low hanging fruit. It is, whether it's intentional or not, it can be very, very toxic. And it doesn't necessarily make you funny. Like, I think a lot of times when we laugh at those things is because we just, as a society, there's a thing about us that laughing at somebody else's frailties make us feel better about ours. And then on the flip side, with somebody like Trump, being able to attack and make fun of somebody that we don't care for makes us feel good about having to deal with that presence because it takes them down, and minimalizes them in a way, in your mind, in a way. Like, but yeah, insult humor isn't like, it's funny. It's one of those things that it's funny because it's not you most of the time. It's funny because, again, sometimes we just like to see other people, like, get shitted on, especially if somebody who's always getting shitted on yourself. But it's just like, I don't know. It's a weird thing. Like, it's like the playground. Like when somebody's bullying someone and making fun of somebody and the kids laugh, it's like, yeah, it's not necessarily funny. They enjoy seeing that person react to it that way. And it's a very strange thing. Yeah.
That setting, though, I guess it's a little different in that setting because he's kind of there specifically to roast, to take the piss out of them. Like it's not like he's doing like an hour-long set of just like whatever topic he wants.
But was
you know
he?
What I mean?
Because he was there to present an award.
But they pick comedians for like they don't put Ricky Gervais up there for no fucking reason. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know.
So I do think that was part of his role.
That, but it's just like at the same time, as a comedian, do you have to roast somebody like Ricky Gervais? That's just again, it's the Don Rickles thing. That's his thing. Chris Rock isn't really a roaster.
I guess that goes to what is the intent of the people who chose him, because I agree. I don't think I guess I have to go back and look at some of his older specials, but like I've never really thought of him as somebody who really excels at that or even tries. But this is the point I was about to make is like when you watch a comedian do like an hour-long set, they have like specific stories or topics you're going to touch throughout the set. Maybe they'll carry some themes through. It's set up a lot differently than, say, like the Comedy Central roaster, what some comedians tend to do with the Oscars, or even the correspondence dinner. It's like it's a different setup. So I do think it was probably intended that he ought to be going at them a bit, which I would argue the format of that is probably, I don't know, maybe the format of that event is a little played out. I don't think, maybe I don't feel as strongly because I don't watch the fucking Oscars anyway. So watching
I don't either.
somebody come up and joke about them isn't going to appeal to me anyway, to be honest. But
all that being said, it didn't deserve him to be slapped, having the shit slapped out of him like that. Like, I don't know what's going on with Will Smith, and but yeah.
I guess we haven't talked about the slap directly as much. So to your point, social media went full social media. You were talking about all the stuff you see in your timeline. I think part of the reason I don't see such things is because a while back, I just went on a big cutting spree. I like unfollowed most accounts because I just noticed this phenomenon for a long time where
I don't unfollow shit. And
I just every day, like every morning I would wake up and I would see some random thing became a huge fucking story that blew up. And it's like every single thing in this, I'm gonna say in this country, maybe beyond that, but everything that happens has to be blown up into something much bigger than it is. So I think you sent me that slap first. I remember seeing it and I was like, what year was this? When the fuck did this happen? It didn't occur to me that it was happening live when you sent it. Because again, I don't watch the Oscars, so I didn't know. I was like, all right, there was an insult. Somebody lost their temper. Who was it? Was it Diddy? Like somebody got up on stage at some point and said something like, after the show, at the after party or whatever, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk, we're going to solve this like family and blah, 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 right? Somebody said something like that. I wish I could remember who it was to give him the credit.
It probably was Diddy, because he did put out a video afterwards where he said something to that effect.
Yeah, I think so. And that's really what it should have been, right? Like, Chris made a joke. It wasn't a very funny joke, like I said, but maybe scoring him on comedy isn't the point here. Was it a little much? Maybe, but he didn't like stab his wife with a knife or something. And Will, for his part, got upset because that's his wife, blah, blah, blah. He lost his temper. That to me was just two guys having an altercation, an awkward moment. Like, if I saw that at like a party or something, I would be like, well, they'll probably have a drink in a couple hours and forget about it. Like, I've had fights with friends before over dumb shit. You know what I mean? Like, in real life, people have a problem. They get over it. But because they're famous and it happened in the public eye and their social media,
and
it has to turn into
the biggest thing.
This national conversation about free speech, about protecting Black women, about I don't know how to phrase it. There was a conversation about power dynamics, I guess, because Will Smith is like a much bigger global star than Chris Rock. I was like, God, this turned into a whole college course on like a bunch of different topics.
But it wasn't
But when
even
at the end of the day,
good
it was a
college
pretty
course
trivial
because
occurrence.
it was done on social media, so you weren't getting good like you weren't getting good dissertations. Just getting a bunch of motherfuckers yelling back and forth at each other, saying dumb shit. That's what
Well,
made it even worse.
people would pick their stance wherever they were standing on that issue, and they felt real passionate about it. Like the second it came out, I saw a friend post something like, Will was just doing what any man would do if they came at his wife. And I was like, so he's a fucking hero or something because he lost his temper and slapped the guy? Like, I'm not saying he should go to prison, but I don't think he should get a fucking parade either. It's not that big a deal.
Right. Like you had the people screaming like, "Go to it's assault. This is a horrible assault." I'm like, yo, he slapped a motherfucker. Like he
I remember you and I had like a little back and forth on it. And even then I was like, I think I asked something like, why wasn't security a little faster on that? Even then I wasn't like, oh, he should go to prison.
Yeah,
I didn't
like
even
I said before, people who have walked up on stage, especially in the way that Will did, in calm manner, they wouldn't have thought anything like that. Like if Will would have started, keep my wife's name at your fucking mouth before he walked up there, they probably would have ran and got him. But he didn't show because it's funny because a lot of people like to throw out the thing, well, he laughed, so he clearly thought it was funny until he saw his wife didn't. And it was like, and I said this to you too. How many times have y'all seen a motherfucker look like he was happy and then pop off and do some crazy shit? Y'all clearly haven't been around situations where, especially in the sense where people being made fun of, like I've seen it before. Yeah, you think they're all good, but then that shit just comes out and they fucking explode. Like
my take was, I saw a lot of people saying the same thing, and my take was like, it takes a second for people to process things, right? Like it wouldn't be surprising to me if he just laughed because it took him a moment to process what had happened and what had been said. Plus Chris was going around the room doing that, so he could have just still been in that laughing mood because everybody had been laughing right fucking before. Like I don't know why everybody thinks that their brain turns on a dime, but
yeah, I mean,
if I recorded you just in your everyday, you'll see that there's a bit of a transition period. So I was like, when I saw everybody say, "Oh, he laughed," and then he saw his wife mad, that might not have been it. He may have just not, thought through the implications of the words yet. It took a second to sink in.
No, I still maintain he was like, okay, I hear you, motherfucker.
I mean, that could have been, I'm not saying that's
for real?
Not it. I'm just saying like,
I got you. And then he got up and was like, yeah, you real funny dude, right? Because he even looked like he was smiling when he got up on stage. And that's why Chris had that weird look on him, like, hey, Will, what's up? Like, because Chris wasn't even alarmed. Clearly, Will went up there with no show of any type of animosity. And again,
to your point,
I've seen
though,
people do that.
To your point, like it's not as though Chris did that with malicious intent. So I'm sure he wouldn't have felt like he was in danger.
So he
in his mind, he didn't do anything hurt him.
Will's coming up here. He looks pleasant. Like, hey, Will, what's going on, man? And then pow.
But the takes, the extreme, like the one about this is what protecting Black women looks like. I don't fucking know what to. When I started seeing that one, I was like, really? This is what protecting Black women looks like?
You don't have to punch a motherfucker or slap a motherfucker in the face to protect your woman. You can, the whole keep my fucking wife's name out your mouth. That's cool.
I guess.
Saying I don't appreciate what you said, stop that shit. It's not cool because it's for her, something like that. That's cool. You didn't need to do it. And again, if that's the way that you do things, all right, that's on you. You deal with the repercussions, which to his credit, Will dealt with the repercussions very, very well. Yeah, he apologized. He said he'll accept any type of, punishment. They laid down the punishment. He was like, "That's fine. I did what I did. I got to take the consequences." Boom. He didn't escalate this shit. But yeah. No, like the biggest problem for me was, why are you doing this in public in that way? Again, you could have verbally conveyed this. You could have waited till after the set, but like walked off during the commercial break and be like, "Chris, let me holler at you. I need you not to be doing that shit, because that's some fucked up shit, what you said. My wife got a like thing, right? Stop that shit." Like, I wish he would have did it that way, but he didn't. Again, I don't know what triggered how people react in different ways. It happened. I don't hold it against him. I wish he didn't do it. I don't condone what he did. Beyond that, and same thing with Chris Rock. Like, the joke wasn't good, and he had no malicious intent. He should have apologized too. I don't know if he apologized to her after finding out the details, and just leave it at that.
I mean, that's why I said, like, in real life, and this is why I can understand. I guess maybe people don't have as much experience with other humans, but you get into altercations like that sometimes in life, and you talk it out. Tempers flare occasionally. You do some shit that you look back on, it's like, all right, I was kind of wrong. I lost my temper. I was kind of in the heat of the moment or whatever. Like, that is just how being a social creature works. So I don't understand why that had to be a thing. What was I going to say there? The protecting Black women thing. Part of me was a little annoyed by that, because it was like, it's not like a train was barreling down on her. That dude said some mean joke, right? Not even that mean, like, whatever. However you want to score how mean that joke was, it was some words. So, like, what are we saying here? That Jada is such an infant, she couldn't respond to that joke by herself. She's a grown woman. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a dick or being wrong about that, but like, it's a little infantilizing to suggest that he needed to protect her from that joke.
Yeah. No.
I mean, I can see if like she just like started breaking down and crying and freaking out. Like if she proved that she was like emotionally too vulnerable to deal with it or something, and he stepped in, fine. But like this notion that he had to step in to protect a grown ass adult from like one mean comment.
Yeah, it's like he's quote unquote stood up for his wife in a way that we didn't need to do, and that's fine. It wasn't an encompassing move that signaled the crowd like, this is what you do as a Black man for a Black woman. Like, we're all y'all motherfuckers when a dude smacks the shit out of his girl in a mall, running up to protect this Black woman by like grabbing that dude and pulling him off her, or pushing him away and be like, "Yo, calling the police," and shit like that. A lot of y'all motherfuckers would turn your heads and be like, "Oh, that ain't had nothing to do with me." That would be protecting Black women to me. You know what I mean?
Sure.
This ain't this, like, the prime example of what you need to do in order to, like, protect a Black woman, or the prime example of what protecting Black women is. Because he wasn't doing it for Black women. He's doing it for his wife. There's a big difference there.
If that was my wife, I could understand being annoyed, and hell, even if maybe I could get, emotional and lost in the heat of the moment, right, and do something rash, but I wouldn't cast that as me protecting my wife. I would cast that as me losing my temper, because I don't think any woman I married would be like,
because there wasn't
such a wallflower that they need protecting from that joke.
That, again, like I said, it could have been handled verbally. It didn't need physicality. It wasn't like Chris Rock jumped in her face, was like, "Yeah, I said it. What you gonna do now? G.I. Jane. Like, it wasn't like that. Like, I don't know.
Like, if I'm him, right? Like, am I not gonna at least like talk to my wife first thing and be like, you want to go talk to him or you want me to, like just the base assumption that she
I think that would be
you
my
mentioned
reaction.
You mentioned, maybe going up and like talking to him during a commercial break or whatever you said, right? It's like, why is the assumption that she couldn't have gone and done that herself? The joke was about her, but she's an adult, right? If she said she couldn't, then fine, go from there. But like, I don't know. I don't mean to.
But no, you said it perfectly. He could have been like, okay, sitting in the crowd, fake laughing, turned to her, like, even if it was just to turn to her, like, yo, let me slap the shit out of this motherfucker. like, ask her, like, yo, you good? Like, you want me to do something? You need me to do something for you? And she let her make that decision. Like, this ain't fucking, the 17th century where, like, I don't know, like Will and Jada are white people and Chris Rock's the black slave that eyeballs the slave master's wife that needs him to get a whipping. You know what I mean? Like, come on, yeah. I made it like really, really extreme. Like it was some shit like that.
I don't know. That one just bugged me because it's like, black women in general are adults, but like, black women are strong people. I think they can. I mean, she's not like, she's famous in her own right too. You know what I mean? She's not like she's random.
Famous in her own right for coming out and speaking out against shit and defending her own. If it really fucked with her, I guaranteed you would have got a video or something from her being like, Chris Rock's a piece of shit. Fuck him for what he did. That was insensitive. And again, like you said, who knows? After the segment, she probably would have went back and maybe slapped him herself and be like, don't say no shit like that about that. Like, it wasn't necessarily like, it wasn't necessary for Will to do that at all. And I hated him that doing that public because part of the discourse was out of hand because I hate to say it like this, but when it's a situation involving black people, it's always going to get escalated up to the like umpteenth degree by white people because they were the main ones that I saw saying like, this is assault. He's such a violent, he's horrible person. This is just like, it's like, y'all been kicking it with Will for how long now? I ain't never seen none of y'all say this shit about Will. Everybody always liked Will. Will, again, hate to say this, but he was one of the acceptable Negroes for a long time. And now this one thing, because one acceptable Negro did something to another acceptable Negro and Chris Rock, all of y'all all of a sudden paint the picture that this guy is like some hooligan thug just raging and that needs to be stopped. Get the fuck out of here. Please.
I was just going to say him doing that also sort of robbed her of the opportunity to make any choice. Whether she wanted to go back there and talk or go back there and slap him or keep her mouth shut or whatever she wanted to do, she didn't get that choice anymore because he decided he was going to step in and do what he wanted, right? Like, yeah. At the end of the day, we're all talking about what Will did. We have no idea what Jada would have done.
No.
Because she didn't get the chance. So
not at all.
I don't know. I don't want to hear this portraying of it as a chivalrous act. It was, if anything, a bit disrespectful to women. But don't take me saying that to say that like, oh, Will is bad, blah, blah. Like I said, he's a human being. He got a little caught up in the moment. Whatever. It happens to all of us.
And that's where
we've all gotten kind of mad and did some shit, you know?
He fucked up. He had a moment. He was big enough to apologize and admit that, he fucked up, had a moment. That's all I need.
That's all it should be.
Apparently
it shouldn't be more than that.
As long as it's like they square it between them, I don't have nothing to do with it. I don't need to be fucking like doing all the outrage shit like people have been doing and picking sides.
I don't know if you saw this take. I don't mean to linger on it more, but like this take, made me laugh and cringe. It was the take that he was still feeling some type of way because of I don't know what you call it, Jada's sexual adventures elsewhere.
Oh, her entanglement, as she called it.
Yes. The take was essentially that he still had some lingering resentment toward that and took it out on Chris, which felt like some real armchair psychiatrist work there.
Yeah, because I've heard takes about how like he's a fucking idiot because she ain't shit and worth that kind of effort because just blah blah
That's
blah
a
blah
different kind of
blah.
toxic for sure.
Yeah, I know.
I think that's why we're talking about it now, right? It spawned so many different takes in so many different directions to so many different extremes. Because to your point about like the white people thing, like, yeah, I definitely noticed a little bit of a Fox News flair going in on that. You know what I mean? Because they always smell blood in the water with that kind of thing. So it definitely kind of showed up in conservative media. One, because of the race thing, and two, because they wanted to have, they wanted to pour the gas on the fire of these free speech arguments we're all having.
Yeah.
So a lot of different parties use this as an excuse to talk about what they want to talk about all the time anyway.
Yeah, and it was just like, y'all, calm down. It wasn't that serious, but I mean, it's again, it goes back to my whole like old man gripe about social media. Like, y'all make the extremes out of things that we wouldn't have done. So in another era, because everybody wants the attention with the hot takes and shit like that y'all are saying all this wild dumb shit, and it's like y'all have lost, like, people have lost the ability to have an adult conversation or to rationalize and reason and come to a much more sane view of things. Like, again, he slapped him. It was fucked up. He shouldn't have did it. Chris Rock, didn't know. Hopefully he apologized, not knowing that the joke may have been sensitive, but like it wasn't as serious as it seemed on all fronts. Like, everybody needs to just chill out.
Pretty much.
What else big happened while we were gone? Trying to save the quote unquote best for last. Oh God, there was another big event that happened in between the Will Smith thing and what happened this week. What else was it?
I'm generally wondering which one you mean by best for last, because there is a
the Roe versus
international
Wade
story.
Last.
Sorry?
Roe versus Wade is last. Let's just to be clear.
Well, you could have meant Ukraine, because I'm pretty sure that
happened
while
Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine, which sparked another conversation, which was weird on my timeline. I don't know if it hit yours, but yeah. So Russia invaded Ukraine, and it's been, I hate to say it this way, but that's the best way to put it is it's kind of a Shakespearean tragedy in a way. Where like it's some real like deep fucked up shit going on, but it's a lot of moments that you laugh your ass off at in between, in particular with how Russia has handled this whole like invasion. In certain parts, they've been Keystone Cops, and in certain parts, it's just like, yo, are y'all fucking the Nazi party now? What the fuck are y'all doing? You know what I mean?
Putin, I guess dictators in general, but Putin is bold in a sense. Like the way they just don't give a shit about even having pretense, really. Like, it's lazy. They don't care. They're just gonna say whatever the fuck they want to say. This guy is even used the, I'm not gonna use the word, he's a fascist, let's say. talking about Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president. And their propaganda is all over the place, and their propaganda is strong, especially within Russia, where they control the media. So all of that fascism is ugly. I think too many people did not take seriously the threat of him doing that, which to me is weird because you saw him annex Crimea, you know what I mean?
All right.
And it wasn't like 50 years ago. It was pretty recent. It was recent. So like you know good and damn well he's willing to commit acts of violence and march right into other territory. So I don't know.
Yeah, this invasion has been quite the interesting thing because Russia has made significant pushes in the country and have been kind of stalled because the whole initial invasion setup was wild. He basically conscripted people to go fight, and a lot of these people, I guess, probably aren't well trained, aren't motivated to do this stuff. So it's been kind of crazy. You've seen videos of Ukrainians like stealing or blowing up tanks. There was a report, I think, was it yesterday or the day before, that Ukraine made that they had blown up 3 warships. You've heard stories of them bribing soldiers to defect by offering them like a certain amount of rubles and letting them just go ahead and set up their life wherever they went, and people taking that offer. Biggest fucking hilarious story. I don't know if you heard this, that Putin apparently had set up a covert operation within Ukraine where he hired like a bunch of people to set up basically cells within the country. People were like basically tasked with taking money from Putin, taking that money and seeking out resources and friendly agents within Ukraine to set up this like, inside army. Well, these people that he hired never did that. What they did was they just pocketed the money and lived their lives in Ukraine, rich off of the money that he gave them to establish this secret covert ops. And when he called them to initiate it, they basically were like, "Oh, yeah." So about that, so he basically had to jail like a ton of people who he thought were helping him establish this network, this inside army that once he sprang his invasion would flood, Ukrainian, major Ukrainian areas of government and things like that and take them out for him. But they didn't. So
I don't even know first of all, how to address that story. I had never really heard that one. Because we've been hearing so many different things, like how the Kremlin was, very, say the Kremlin, they were very confident that they could just walk in and steamroll it, and how they, maybe Putin doesn't even know what's really going on the ground because his people are too afraid to tell him that they're struggling to take all of Ukraine. Obviously, all the horrible human rights abuses happening there. It is what it was always going to be, a clusterfuck of a situation. And it is spawning a lot of talk about really what America should do. I was going to say what NATO and the West should do, but I do feel like America is the main talking point. We are the super duper biggest dick gun having people. So I don't know if you feel like that's an unfair interpretation, but I do feel like that's just sort of the way it's spoken about is like, what is America going to do?
Well, no,
I was listening to
because
somebody from Taiwan talk the other day because, you know, what's happening between Russia and Ukraine brought up suggestions about what China might do with Taiwan. And the question was, you know, would America help intervene if China came after Taiwan and all that shit? And it's like, I mean, I feel like the whole world has a responsibility to curb that kind of behavior. But yes, America is the guy.
but it's part of the reason that people think that way is because that's what this country has wanted established. That's the mentality that people want. That we are, you know, we always tout this image that America is the bastion of freedom, of hope. Like we are the world police, you know. When there's something wrong, America fixes, rights the wrong, things like that. We've generated this, you know, that type of opinion that people have. That's why people always look to us and be like, so what you gonna do? You always say that you're the seat of democracy, you know, land of the free, home of the brave. You know, you got the saying on the Statue of Liberty, you know, bring us all your, you know, huddled poor masses and things like you've cultivated this reputation that you are the beacon of light in the world, even though a lot of people don't care for us and have negative opinions of us. Even those who have negative opinions of us, when shit turns dark for them, they turn and be like, so what you gonna do, America? Aren't you the people who are supposed to help? Aren't you the people who can fix these problems? That's what you said, right? You know,
I didn't say that, by the way, to shit talk those people, you know, who are struggling.
no, I know
want our help
I
or
know
anything,
you didn't.
to be clear.
Like, but it's like it makes sense that you hear that still, unfortunately, which you shouldn't. I find it weird that you still hear that personally, especially since so many different places in Europe has surpassed us in so many areas and things like that. Like, yeah, like it's weird to say this, but maybe you want to go talk to Germany first. Or something like that. Like,
Yeah, I when I was listening to him talk, to be fair, he did say that, you know, America and the West more generally, but like you just hear it in the way people speak around the world. Like they almost say America as though or the West in a way that is just synonymous with America. Like it's just globally assumed that we ought to do such things. I'm not even saying that we ought not, but the reason I bring this up is because, you know, going back to Ukraine, and I get that this is a difficult situation because, you know, we do not wish to be dragged into all out war with Russia, especially with the threat of nuclear arms and whatnot. I get that there is that danger, but we as a world, barring that, we need to not tolerate what Putin is doing, that type of behavior globally anymore, because, you know, you look historically, I feel like most people don't really think about this fact, but most of human history, most of social history is a story of conquest. You know, I mean, lands being taken over by different groups coming in. There's a lot of, you know, we talk about cultures as though they're this static thing, but that's not really true. You look anywhere in the world, like that patch of land has probably been taken over several times by that point. So I say that to say that it is a more modern disgust with that kind of behavior. It's a more modern thing to not want imperialism on that level. And we need to be unified and saying, yeah, we don't do this anymore. It's no longer okay. You don't just get to come in and do shit because you're stronger. And I know people are going to say, like, you know, who's America to, you know, talk about anti-imperialism? You guys have taken over territories too. Yeah, and we should all stop. You know, like I feel like we've been making that move for decades now anyway. I'm I don't know. I feel like this is coming off like me, like shit talking Europe too. Like, oh, you guys aren't doing enough. No, they're doing stuff. I just meant, I don't know what to do with that situation. It's beyond me. Good luck, Biden.
Yeah, and I don't know how much far. Like, I think what we've done so far, like the world has done so far with the federal sanctions and things like that. I'm fine with that because nobody wants a World War III. And I've heard this said in many different places. You don't really need to do the whole physical war thing anymore, the way that all these sanctions and financial rules and regulations, trade stuff, how you can really fuck with the country's ability to actually wage war by fucking with their money the most these days.
So I guess I have two things to say that. One is a question. One, I do think people are worried about the effectiveness well, for several reasons. One, a lot of places are dependent on Russian oil, as a matter of fact. So it's not that easy for them to just cut that tie at the moment. Two, they are worried about other places, like I believe India, buying Russian oil instead, and therefore helping prop up their financial stability. So it certainly isn't a perfect tactic, but yes, the sanctions are a useful tool. I don't know if they're enough in and of themselves. But also three, and then this one's more of a question. What happened? Like, say Putin calls it all off, he stops right now, right? What happens next? Because I feel like if he was to do that, the answer would be we just go back to business as usual. And I feel like that can't be the answer.
Yeah, and that's the strange thing that's about it. By the way, he's not calling off anytime soon because rumors are
purely hypothetical.
I'm just saying, but rumors, just to let you know, rumors are that they're close to actually declaring war against the Ukraine to make it an actual official war, which is mind-boggling because, like, you've been over there fucking trying to bomb the hell out of and, shoot the hell out of these people for a couple of months now, and it's not a war? Question mark? Like, so, yeah, they're sitting there trying to figure out if they're going to officially declare war any day now.
They're bombing hospitals and they don't think it's a war. What are they going to do when
right?
It's a
like
war?
We're saying, this is just it's just an altercation or a maneuver. The practice run. We're gonna really come with the war. Which oddly enough kind of seems to be their logic because, again, part of the rumors is that the declaration of war would allow them to actually legitimately start tapping into other resources of their military system, which you probably should have done that when you first came over, because right now, yeah, Russia might end up taking over, but it's going to be such a heavy toll and a heavy cost. So, it's like, is this actually really worth it? But I don't know.
For Russia?
Yeah.
Not for Russia, maybe for Putin, because I think he's the one who really has that old school vision of the Soviet Union.
Is it worth it for him? Like, what's going to look, the way that things are going, how it's, turning out, like, okay, fine, you might slow bleed them into the fold, but you've destroyed resources, you've destroyed, people's lives, you've lost a lot of people.
I guess I'm arguing he's not, if he was motivated by that sort of thing, he wouldn't have attacked in the first place. I think satisfying his crazed ideal of returning to the old Soviet Union or whatever is the only thing that matters. And if he can achieve some semblance of that, that might be good enough to satisfy him. And even if it's not, he's a dictator and he's, very good at propaganda, right? He might just tell himself he had a glorious victory and be happy with it. I'm not sure to what extent they're caught up in their own propaganda, so they might be able to just convince themselves of a victory no matter what happens. But to the question of if he were to stop, or if he just goes in and steamrolls them and wins, whatever that means for him, I feel the thing that worries me is like I said, we can't just go back to normal with this motherfucker. We can't just like lift sanctions on Russia and be like, all right, crisis averted. Like, we need to make it clear to him and the rest of the world that this is not gonna fly. And if we just go back to business as normal, that does not send that message. You know what I mean? And there needs to be a very, if not permanent, a very long-term punishment for that. But I know people talking about, charging him up on war crimes or whatever. I don't know how feasible that shit is. I don't know, some long-term way to get them to, I don't know what the word is, compensate or whatever, what they've done. I say they. I should be directing most of it toward Putin and whoever is loyal to him, I guess. But I don't know to what extent his propaganda has really convinced his entire nation that this makes sense. And I guess that even that's its own little weird conundrum, right? Like, a lot of these people are like drowning in his propaganda. So I'm sure a lot of them have been brainwashed by what his regime says. So how do you deal with those people in terms of culpability? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes, what the end game is, how it plays out. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just say, I've been annoyed by a question I've heard some reporters asking Volodymyr Zelensky, which is, do you feel like, Ukraine's attempt to join NATO triggered this? Like, I'm sorry, that feels like the most victim blaming shit I've ever heard in my fucking life. Like, they should have the autonomy to do that if they wanted to without being fucking murdered.
Yeah, but at the same time, it has been, thrown out there by the government even that the possibility is that he saw that as a threat, and that's why he wanted to take them off the board, because he fears NATO having a nation that far east. Because as it stands now, NATO is pretty much, the majority of Western Europe. Eastern Europe's not really locked into that fold.
Sure. All of it, I just don't like the way the reporters pose that question, as though
I understand.
Like, it just bugs me. Like, look, no matter what the rationale is, the point is Putin's a fucking asshole and a murderer, and he shouldn't be doing this. Like, what is the term? I've heard the term like Washington brain sometimes with reporters that go up to the Hill, where they'll just like ask things that like no normal person is thinking about or talk, that their focus is always a bit weird to me. And I felt that way when I was listening to some of the reporters that would talk to Volodymyr Zelensky. It was just like, okay, I don't feel like that's the relevant question right now. Maybe I felt too emotional listening to him have to answer some of these questions, but I've been kind of annoyed at some of the coverage whenever people speak to him. And it just as a side note, there was some event a few weeks back where apparently a couple of our congressmen or something like leaked some data from a meeting with him that they shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah.
Who the fuck was it? I'm sorry. It was a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember the story that well, but fucking embarrassing. I just want to say fucking embarrassing. Because before that, he had asked them explicitly not to share any information, and then they went ahead and fucking did it anyway. For no reason. Fucking pathetic. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. Again, it's going to be interesting, all of the fallout and things, because you have U.S. senators and congressmen backing Russia and asking stupid questions like, are they really wrong for what they're doing and shit like that? And it's just like, it's fucking. I don't know. It's gonna be. These are very, very interesting times politically and socially that we live in. Moving forward, I remembered what it was, the other major thing, and let's just keep this as short as possible. Elon Musk bought Twix. The man has a small dick and
Twix.
couldn't take. Did I say Twix?
Yeah.
Twitch. Did I say Twitch or Twitter? I don't know.
They were both wrong. It doesn't matter. It's Twitter. Yeah.
And they're all wrong. It's Twitter. Yeah, because this whole situation annoys me. And I'll get into that later. But Elon Musk bought Twitter because he has a small dick and he didn't like being questioned or having to adhere to rules and all that shit. And because nobody likes him, he felt like the best way to get people to like him was to buy Twitter and then bring people to heel. It ain't working out too well so far, but who knows what rules and regulations he'll put to place to try to like get rid of his detractors, even though he says he doesn't want people who, his, critics to leave because it wouldn't be free speech if they did. And he's been trying to post like he's doing this for free speech. No, he's not. He's a small dick, minuscule man who has done nothing significant in his life except for buy shit to become famous. And he needs you to love him because if you don't, then he'll have to go back and cry in his daddy's emerald fields or something. I don't know.
That was a hard cue to jump in on there. Where to begin? Musk making that bid to buy Twitter. First of all, you should always be. It does take confidence to do certain jobs, right? Like the guy who goes to be president, whether it be Trump or be Obama, needs to have some level of confidence that they can actually enact some level of change. That said, one difference between somebody like Trump versus Obama was Obama said, yes, we can. And Trump says, I can fix it. And I know you're wondering why I went there instead of focusing on Elon. My point is, when somebody tells you that they're the solution to a problem by themselves, that should fucking worry you about that person's ego. You know what I mean? Like everybody should have a little bit of an ego, but, and maybe people don't like me comparing Elon to Trump, but in terms of that ego problem, I think that is similar. Like, if the problems of Twitter were so easily fixed, they would have been fixed already. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very easy to just bitch about problems. It's not so easy to do things about them. I say this partially as an engineer too, because I remember, years back when a lot more of the conversation was focused on Facebook. And admittedly, these social media platforms do need to do more. I'm not trying to absolve them of responsibility, but day after day on the news, I would hear people talk about what the platforms need to do more. They need to fix it. They need to do this and that. And it's like, never once, not once with any of that coverage, with any of those news anchors, did I hear them suggest what the platform should actually do. Not once. Like every time they just said, they need to fix it. They need to do it better. They need to use their algorithms. And I'm like, I bet money most of you motherfuckers using the word algorithm don't even know what that means. You just think an algorithm is a magic thing that you just shove up a computer's ass and it does what it do. I don't know. But like, yes, you can write any algorithm you want, but the decision has to be made about what the algorithm ought to do, which is what none of you ever specify. And leading back to Elon, I'm not convinced that he has any particularly good ideas. I'm not sure why it's always just taken as a given that Elon is a genius. I'm not saying he's an idiot, but merely because he owns tech companies does not make him like, the top engineer on earth or something. Even if he was, I'm an engineer and I don't feel confident that I can solve the world's problems either, right? Like,
yeah. Let's be clear. The man has no legitimate skill other than I'm rich.
Yeah, this notion that at best I might say that he has some kind of vision, I guess, and bought specific companies and made different kinds of investments. I don't know. That's about the
Yeah, the
nicest I
vision
can
is
say about the guy.
cha-ching. That's why you see him
Uh,
talk about everybody should buy Doge and shit like that, because he's trying to
well,
get in and get as much money as he can and get out.
I mean, in terms of investments like SpaceX or like those are not obvious.
Even that's a
huge
novelty
money
thing. And
makers.
his whole thing is, if it works, he could charge people dumb fucking money to go to Mars or the moon.
Sure. Like that aside, and like I said, I don't know why people assume he's a genius. I don't have any extreme confidence in his ability to solve whatever problems he thinks there is. So yeah, that ego thing is a problem. The conversation about free speech on social media is a dumb one, or at least most people have it in a dumb way. And this is really the bigger problem, is that people all over the spectrum on this issue, like, oh, you need to have this idea that you need to have like perfect free speech on that the conservative right seems to have, because they don't want to have any sort of consequences of any kind for whatever they say, is ridiculous. You can't go into your workplace and call everybody a cunt for a reason. You know, that's not tampering on your free speech. It is a requirement of a functional social group to have some sort of norms that are being adhered to. Some kind of regulation that happens. Sorry.
But he doesn't want that. Like he clearly knows what he wants. He wants to be able to make a toxic fucking environment where he doesn't have to take the responsibility of consequences, that his friends don't have to take the responsibility of consequences, that he can do and say whatever the fuck he wants without anybody clapping back.
The free speech argument, as it's stated by people like him, make me think that people just have a really elementary understanding of not just things like the Constitution, but just the spirit of America. Like, people always just throw around the words rights and freedom like they're supposed to be these incredible absolutes. Like, I have the right to do whatever the fuck I want because I'm an American. I'm free to say and do whatever I want. It's like, no. That's why during the pandemic, you would see people get all pissy about masks. Like, what, are you going to kick me out because I don't have a mask? Yes, bitch, you don't have infinite rights. Stop. This is an illusion you guys have created for yourself. You have never had that in this country. You don't.
You don't have it in life because there's rules and regulations in life, even if it's not called rules and regulations. When your mom fucking tells you to do something and you don't do it, you're going to get in trouble. You broke the rule. Like, it's just weird how I shouldn't say we, but some adults grow to be of a certain age and still kind of get fixated on, in a way, their mothers telling them no. Because that's the problem with Elon Musk. He doesn't like being told no. He doesn't like being told, no, I don't think you're cool. He doesn't like being told anything that doesn't shine a light on him and makes it seem like this man, like, you know, sits upon a mountain and throws Teslas to the whole world so everybody can have an electric car. He's not this magnanimous figure that he tries to make himself seem like on social media. He got exposed and he doesn't like it. But for him, unfortunately for us, he has the money to be able to do what the fuck he wants. And this, like, now it'll be very interesting to see how this whole sale goes down, because that's a chunk of liquid capital that you're going to be throwing as one of the richest people in the world for this thing, just so you don't have to follow the rules. What would happen if Twitter became such a toxic place that people like me and you and a lot of other people just like, fuck it. We don't need this. We can talk to each other in other means. We can do other social media sites, and the next big thing ends up blowing up and blowing his shit out the water, value-wise.
I guess that's possible. I do think it's hard for other platforms to get that kind of traction because, you know, again, coming from an engineering standpoint, I've seen this take all the time that you can just spin up a Twitter clone and it'd be all good. And I'm like, well, if it was that fucking easy, it would be there, right? Like Twitter's makes a pretty decent amount of money. It was that easy to just shit one out.
Right.
One, people would do it, and two, people ignore certain things about psychology. Like it's just hard to get people to flow from one social network to the other. Because as much as, you know, there was that big exodus from MySpace to Facebook, and then a lot of people are on Twitter and Instagram now. What's it been, about 15, 20 years? And you've only really moved between those 2 or 3 for a reason, right? And even to the extent that people are branching out to some others like Instagram or TikTok, that's because they do like slightly different services, right? Like Twitter allows you to be in connection with basically the whole fucking world. Whereas Facebook was mostly just sort of interpersonal relationships. Instagram, it's just a place for you to dump your pictures and jerk off to random models, I guess. I don't know what people do there. I don't have one. And TikTok is just...
It really isn't that, but it's sad that that's what we now come to think of it, like it's Pornhub light.
I'm sure, you know, people also post pictures of their food and whatever stupid shit people take pictures of. I'm sorry. I don't know where that sudden resentment toward Instagram came from. I don't have one, like I said, but like,
I know where it came from. It came from Twitter. That's the funny part about it.
TikTok
and post their Instagram pictures on Twitter and then link you to the Instagram. Like, if you want to see more, go to my Instagram.
TikTok and Vine gain traction because they have this sort of really short form, quick to digest template for their videos. You see it on YouTube now too, because they have their shorts. Like it's just a very popular thing. So like the only reason those other social media platforms are starting to rise is because they just sort of attack different urges for people. But otherwise, it's not really that fucking trivial for a social media platform to take off. So, yeah, to all those people with that hot take, like, yeah, fuck it, we'll just make another one. I would hesitate, maybe, but it wouldn't be painless. And the free speech thing, this is a dumb conversation because, like, I feel like, especially the conservative right, has a good tendency of like way overstating the issue. Like, yes, there are cases where, you know, Twitter maybe blocks something or responds to something in a way that they shouldn't have, where they kind of overstep or they make a dumb decision or whatever. It's true, it happens, but like, I think I said this to you the other day, like, how many people do you know that have actually been banned off of Twitter?
Yeah, no, it's not a huge total. And it's not necessary. And you're talking perma bans, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, when I asked you the question, but
suspended now and then for dumb shit, but yeah, it's like
even then, sometimes it's like
booted to like the negative zone. No.
Yeah, sometimes people are like troll. The reason I went with the perma ban question is because I know sometimes people will troll a particular user by like reporting some shit that they say to try and get them banned. So they try to weaponize the banning system. So I recognize that might be a thing, but you know, everybody's like, "Oh, Twitter's policing my speech." What the fuck have you said that really got you in deep shit? I see lots of wild shit on Twitter all the fucking time. Y'all are pretty fucking free now. So this whole thing, like, oh no, Twitter isn't free. Yeah, it is pretty much. Like when you look at an example like Trump, which is, you know, one of the examples I think Elon has been asked about a couple of times now. Think about how far Trump had to fucking go before he was actually banned. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
He was on there for years doing all kinds of reckless shit, stopping all over their terms of service before anybody did fucking anything about it. So I don't want to hear about how this super liberal, pearl clutching liberals at Twitter don't want you to have free speech, because I have to read the stupid fucking things you say every day. So clearly they're allowing you to say it.
Yeah. No,
you mentioned like what happens if under Elon it becomes a cesspool. It fucking is already. And that's
but you know what I mean. Like it becomes some.
Yeah, I do know. It could.
Which
it could always
it's
get worse.
wild to say. Like it becomes worse. Jesus Christ.
But you do have a point, because I've seen plenty of people on social media energized by Elon's presence, to where they're like, "Oh shit, our champion Elon is here. Now we can really let loose." And I'm like, that wasn't what y'all do. Y'all were taking it light before,
right? Like, oh shit, you mean to tell me this was the tame version?
That was
thing?
You censoring yourself. So you're definitely right. It could happen.
But as I said to someone before, and thank you, I finally caught that damn bug that was flying around. Shit. Anyway, sorry. If you heard a clap, that was that noise, me swatting bug. But no, like I was saying to people before about it, it's like, yo, don't be acting upset about this that much. Like, yeah, it's like, for me, it's upsetting because, as other people have stated before too, like some of the most major outlets for not just social media but media period, Washington Post being owned by Jeff Bezos, Facebook being owned by Mark Zuckerberg, Twitter now being owned by Elon Musk. A lot of these major hubs of communication in today's world are in the control of people who have enough money to buy, that control. And that's a discerning thing, because it's just like with Fox, Rupert Murdoch has built this empire and this media network that he can control the narrative with his views. Because even though he's not American, a lot of the views that you see on Fox News is reflecting of the type of person that Rupert Murdoch is. Now, to his credit, Jeff Bezos hasn't really done anything to bother the Washington Post. He just lets it exist, which is what you kind of would hope that you would get from this type of ownership. But when you have, again, like you have the kid who nobody liked, who his only one true attribute was he was rich by proxy, getting a platform in which he's been clowned, ridiculed, harassed, some of this stuff unwarranted for his opinion and things like that. Well, it's kind of the equivalent of, I guess you could say we're the bullies. And then, post high school, come back for the 25th reunion. And the kid that we used to bully now has this fantastic job and all of this shit. And he's ready to flaunt it in our faces and manipulate, use that to bring all of us down. That's where I see with Elon Musk. Like he's a fucking, entitled prick who felt like the world did him a disservice by not loving him the way that he thought that they should. And now he's going to retaliate.
Two things to kind of piggyback off your school analogy there. Musk is immature, just plain and simple. Like he's on Twitter all the time, like a 15-year-old. He reminds me of like those I say 15, really like 12, 13, 14-year-olds who like play Fortnite or play Call of Duty. You know, that kind of like really juvenile sense of humor where they just have to like troll everything with these dumb memes and shit. Like he's just genuinely immature. Consistently all the time in general. He's just online to troll. So I'm like, when I hear people talk about like, oh yeah, great, this guy's in charge, he's gonna do this and that, I'm like, he has the maturity level of a 14-year-old and you're putting this much power in his hands like it's a good fucking thing. Grow up. Second, you hear a lot of talk about how Twitter is, you know, quote unquote, the public square. And I'm glad people are starting to say that, because for a while, when people would talk about like free speech on Twitter, the common retort was that, well, Twitter is a private company and they can do what they want. And they can, it's true. At the end of the day, they're a private, well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said private company. Otherwise they wouldn't be bought so easily. They are a company and they can set their rules as they wish. But saying that is kind of avoiding the bigger social problem, which is that we live in the age of the internet, and the internet, or rather the platforms on the internet now, are a major part of the public square. Like the line is blurry around what the public square means now in the age of the internet. So it's not as easy as just saying Twitter is a company and they can do what they want. That is true legally. That does not really solve the bigger social issue around how people communicate now and how socializing works now. That said, if to the extent that you accept that a platform like Twitter is a major part of the public square, you should be really fucking worried when a random guy just walks up and buys the public square because he doesn't like the way it works. Right. That's not healthy either. That should be really fucking worried.
At all.
So for anybody who uses that public square analogy, you should have chills going down your spine that any person with enough money who doesn't like what's happening can just walk outside and buy the park and tell you to fuck off. Like that is not the solution either. Stop looking to random rich motherfuckers to save the world, by the way.
Right. Jesus. Like, but I don't know, it's just the way that fucking shit is.
What's gonna happen if I, for some reason, become super rich and I don't like what he's doing, and I have a little bit more money than him, that I can just come and buy it and do what I want to? At some point, it's barely a public square anymore, right? I'm not saying I know what the solution is. Like, oh, maybe the government should enact some sort of government-based social media program that actually follows the rules. I don't know, but like, y'all way oversimplify this problem and act like any dumb thing a person does is the solution. No.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of dumb people, okay. I'm tired, and I'm gonna make myself even more tired because I said I was saving the best for last, and then I realized, holy shit, I shouldn't have saved this. I should have just ripped the Band-Aid off because this is gonna be exhausting, people. So the last of the big things that happened in our absence, which is actually one of the most current topic on this show, is Roe versus Wade. There's been a leaked document that is supposedly what do they call it?
Draft?
No, I know it's a draft, but what is the term of the actual statement that they use? There's a certain. It's not dissension, because dissension is you opposing it. Whatever the case is, I'm tired, y'all. Let's just move on. Whatever the case, a draft of Alito's explanation as to why the Supreme Court feels that Roe versus Wade should not be looked upon as, basically, let's just say it simply. His whole draft summed it up in the words that abortion shouldn't be legal, and that states should be able to like decide whether or not they want to legalize it without any overarching government oversight on it, declaring that you can't just say that this inalienable right of people is illegal. What's super fascinating about it, I don't know if you read it. Did you read it or listen to some of the key points from it?
Not as much. Honestly, I don't remember if I was streaming or what I was doing when this started to come up, but
I think you were streaming.
I
think you were streaming when I sent you that article.
I did see some of that going on social media, and I just remember thinking I did not get the full picture of what was happening until like hours later in the middle of the night. So I haven't really sat down and done any reading on it. Like right before I went to sleep, I noticed them saying what it was. I was like, oh shit, it's more serious than I thought. So, and to your point, it was tiring. So I kind of,
yeah,
I'm aware, but no, I haven't like read the actual draft opinion or anything.
One of the key points that he was making in it was that, how could you call this basically a right of a person when, historically speaking, in this country, things like that were always looked upon as not being a right or a privilege. Furthermore, this country basically, in his mind, wasn't designed to acknowledge certain things like that as a right, because it's basically not something that the founding fathers intended upon to be included as a right within the Constitution. Or to say it simply, if it ain't in the Constitution, how could you call it something that's a right for you to have?
I guess I need to read it and think more about that, because first of all, I think it's the 9th Amendment that says something like, just because something is not enumerated here does not mean it is not a right per se, or something like that. It's like one of the amendments gives a sort of means of extending rights beyond what is explicitly written. So that wouldn't be true. But and forgive me if I'm mixing up the amendments. I'm not a constitutional expert there. I don't always remember which one is which, but
it's the 9th, because I just looked it up just to back it up. Like, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain things should not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people, which basically is saying that the federal government doesn't own the rights that are not listed in the Constitution, but instead they belong to the citizens. Meaning, we have our rights, like to certain things.
So yeah, the lack of very specific enumeration does not deny you.
But his argument is, well, that's not true, and it's fucked up, because the way that Supreme Court, their rulings are taken in this country, they're pretty much like the standard as to how you should go about doing things. And for him to say this is very, very threatening, because I was listening to podcasts and it dawned on me while they were talking about this. It's like, by him saying this, anything that's not in his mind or in their mind constitutional law is up for fair game. So what happens to, things like, LGBTQ plus rulings or statutes or laws that have been passed to for protections and things like that? What about same-sex marriage? Same-sex marriage isn't a constitutional right. It's been federally recognized, I believe, but it's not an initial constitutional right. It's not in the amendments, which, by the way, his whole argument too, to me, it's weird because it's like, you do know that we have amendments for a reason. And so by calling the whole, the historic intent of the Constitution, it's kind of dumb to me in that sense, because like the historical intent of the Constitution is that as time goes on, it adapts and it grows, which it hasn't done in a while. Not by the fault of his own, but the fault of the people who have been placed in office, and also the fault of the rule of how something becomes an amendment.
Sorry, I was responding to something there. I just want to say before, I was not necessarily challenging what he said because I don't have the scholarly bona fides to do that. But it was, how do I make this thing shut off? The reason I got distracted is because some other sound started popping up there that I'm trying to kill.
It's funny because I can't hear it on this end.
No, it's one of these tabs or something that just started playing an ad or something like that. One of the browsers. To tie all this back, away from the Supreme Court decision for a second, the slope we have been on the last, year or so has been fucking crazy with all these, this big Republican push across the country to really cut into abortion law, which I guess is what really started pushing this challenge to begin with. So you got to give it to these Republican motherfuckers. They are relentless. They have not backed down on this shit for decades. And here we are. Because Roe was decided in the 70s? These motherfuckers don't quit.
Yeah, Roe versus Wade, late 70s. And so for a good 50 years or so, they've been fucking dogging this shit. 1973, so it was early 70s. God damn. Yeah. It's just about 50 years as of next year.
So there's something relentlessly douchey about these guys. And I just want to point that out just to tie it back into their efforts for decades and again in most last year or so, where they really ramped it up. They said, we're not moving into the future no matter what, fuck you.
That's pretty much their motto and their theme, like, fuck the future, do what we say, how we want now.
And to bring it back, I guess, to the Supreme Court talk, I think yesterday you mentioned some people having takes like, this is why we need the term limits, this is why we need to abolish the Supreme Court. And I'm sure this is going to take, this is why we need actual fucking laws. Like, yes, the Supreme Court exists to interpret, the Constitution and whatnot, make decisions on cases. But when I started thinking about that, I just remember thinking, like, this is like the Trump shit all over again, where you're just reminded that so many things in regard to the presidency and the White House and Congress, all that stuff, it's not like an actual law. It's just a norm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's some weird American resistance to codifying things in law, I guess.
Well, but here's the biggest problem, especially now that they're apparently going to this course. By the way, there's somewhat confirmation that this is real because John Roberts came out and gave a statement blasting the fact that this information came out and announced that they're launching an investigation within the Supreme Court to find out who would leak such a document. So Yeah, they're trying to do this. And okay, just to give people some context and maybe ease their worries. Remember, this is a draft. This isn't finalized what they think, although I'm sure with Alito, it's pretty much what he thinks and what he wants to do. Because again, I feel like he worded, I didn't notice it until I heard it on the podcast, but I feel like what I told you about him making that whole thing about like it's not in the Constitution, basically. So how could you say that this is a right that was intended to be in this country? I really do feel like this is like his way of giving certain states a clear path to fucking snake anything that they don't like. You know what I mean? Or that they don't want to have happen. So yeah, thousands of books will be banned. You know, shit. It's not intended in the Constitution to teach, the history of the Civil War or slavery. So fuck it. Ban any courses that do that. Ban Black History Month for that matter. Ban National Women's Month. All
I
that
don't know
shit.
if we were recording when you said it, but you said something like, we're going back to the Stone Age or some shit. And like, yeah, it's really sinking in as you bring up, all these different attacks. Because, it's not, like you said, it's not just the abortion ban. It's, a larger attack on sexuality, I guess, with all these book bans and race with the book bans as well. They want an era of no knowledge or thought, really. Which is, I would say, ironic for the free speech camp, but that's always been their game. And maybe it is also, how should I put this? Maybe Democrats don't do a good enough job of owning certain things. Like, it's always been strange to me the way Republicans, and maybe this isn't as true now, but like historically, Republicans seem to have like owned notions like patriotism, even though they could give a shit about, spending money on veterans. And the way they seem to have taken over this free speech issue, although they, as you see time and time again, want to tamp down free speech of any. I just saw like some article of some teacher in Florida who got canned for talking about sexual orientation or some shit. It's like, I don't know how it is they managed to look like they're the owners and champions of certain issues that they really not only don't care about, but are often in opposition to. I guess they just have a better PR team than Democrats do. I don't know what the fuck that is. It's I don't want to say it's impressive, but it's kind of awe-inspiring almost.
I think part of it is that they're comfortable in being disingenuous. They know that they're lying. And they also know that their base is not going to question what they're saying, so long as they give them what they want. You know what I mean? So when us intelligent people scream, that's not how it is, they just shrug their shoulders and just stare at you. Because at the end of the day, they know that there's enough people that who are politically ignorant and generally ignorant and don't pay attention to what actually goes on enough to read between the lines, like, because all they're going to do is just say something that kind of adheres to them. It's just like, again, you said you notice people gearing up for this whole like return of Elon Musk thing. It's the same thing with with this, like, who was it? What was that? What was I listening to? It was, I think it was in the same podcast, but somebody said that he overheard a conversation or something, the two people talking about women. I can't remember where it was. I heard it, and how like different things that they should do, and like they shouldn't be allowed to do this or be allowed to talk back or something crazy like that. I forget it, but it's just like you're already taking the next step forward. It's like, all right, you're gonna ban abortions, but now you got people gearing up for the return of, women should be, quiet, barefoot, and pregnant type mentality, like being spoke upon in public and shit like that. Like, this opens up a weird, like, fucked up door to a reality that we haven't seen in our lifetimes. And the only people who've seen this is like our grandparents, or like for me, like God rest his soul, my mom could remember the, like, 50s. My grandmother, God rest her soul, she could remember everything before women's suffrage happened. Nobody born in the, like, late 50s and beyond know that type of life. You know what I mean? Or when women's suffrage passed? It was like the 40s or something, right? Now I have to look at women's suffrage. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think your point there is I don't want to say complacency, but
Well, shit, that shit was passed it was ratified in 1920. So yeah, no shit. Even then, yeah, fuck. Damn, that shows you how fucked up, like, things have been, though. Anyway, yeah, but again, the point is, like, things that didn't happen um before, that only, like, we got passed out the stories of, like, how horrible are. It's weird that shit might return.
shut this shit up. So what now? Does AOC bully cinema into why am I lost for words here?
No, I'm just fine. I'm gonna save you. Here's the what now. The what now is
Into killing the filibuster. That's what I was gonna say.
no, the what now is, what the fuck are you going to do? Because you didn't do what you needed to do. Yes, I'm going to this rant, people. Fuck y'all if you have a problem with it, because you're probably one of the people who helped cause this problem. But you didn't need what you did. You didn't do what you needed to do in 2016. Everybody in the world told you that this motherfucker was going to be a maniac and he was going to be a problem. Since George Bush Jr., people like McConnell, Buhner, all of them have been telling you they want to fucking gain the most control they can get, so that when they have all the congressional houses and they have the presidency, if they can ever get that to line up, they're going to get rid of shit like Roe versus Wade. They're going to address things like same-sex marriages. Flash forward to around 2012, when they won back Congress, while Obama was in office. They told you, we're not going to let you have justices, because we're going to use this shit so that if we get, like, the majority of control and get everything squared, we're going to pick as many justices as we need to help shape the law the way that we want to. We're going to fucking pass as many laws and things like that we can to curtail anything that we find problematic. They've been telling you this shit for a long fucking time. In comes Trump, and they put themselves 100% behind this guy, even though they can't stand him. They don't really fucking care for him, because they saw an opportunity to get the exact situation that they wanted. Hillary Clinton was, basically railroaded by her own people who claim that they're liberal, who claim that they're Democrats, who claim that they want, like, better things for people, because they didn't like her personality, or they, whatever the reason, they didn't get Bernie Sanders, or however you want to spin it. You made all these fucking excuses as to why you either wouldn't vote for her or you wouldn't vote at all. I don't know what the fuck it is that she did to you in your personal lives. Like, she fucked your husband or your wife. She slapped the shit out of your kids. Something like that. She stole food off your plate. Whatever the fuck you made up in your fucking stupid ass ignorant minds to make you say that you can't vote for her and that she's the same as Trump, knowing that she's not. If anybody saw any of those debates, you knew she was nothing like Trump. But you ignored all of like common sense because you wanted to throw a hissy fit, especially you Bernie bros and shit like that. You didn't get what you want because you thought he was a perfect candidate, which he wasn't a perfect candidate. No fucking thing as a perfect candidate, by the way, y'all. There's always going to be a problem with somebody. I had a problem with Obama and his educational package. Everybody has an issue with somebody. That don't mean that you can't look at column A and column B and say one is better than the other. But y'all want to be the fucking idiots and fucking, root yourselves in that ignorant fucking view, right? So Trump won. And what happened? He gets Gorsuch because that was the seat that fucking Obama was supposed to pick. But once they got congressional control again, they refused to fucking let any nominees of his go through. Our attorney general should be a fucking goddamn Supreme Court justice right now. But they kept it away from him because they wanted to hold that seat. Why? Because again, the way that the Supreme Court rulings are treated, they're treated as basically the last word on a political issue in this country. So they held that. They got Gorsuch. Then they got another justice in. I forgot who left when Kavanaugh took over. But they got that, and that made it 5. That gave them 5-4 in the court. Then RBG died. Oh, Trump's still in office. Guess what now? It's well, no, at that time it was 7-2, now that I think of it. When Cohen was it 7-2 or was it 6? It was 6-3. And that's it. Not only did you give them a majority, you gave them an overriding majority where it would take 2 of them to flip for them not to get what the fuck they wanted. So you created a situation where they were able to install people who they knew would play ball. They didn't put these people as Supreme Court justices because they thought they were the most qualified people. Gorsuch may be the closest thing to a qualified Supreme Court justice that they actually did nominate. All the other 2, they were just like, fuck it. We're just building numbers at this. We're padding our lead. And all y'all dumb motherfuckers like, that's fine because they're not going to get rid of all these laws and things like that. Look what happened. Lo and behold, Roe versus Wade is going down like they've been trying to get rid of for 50 years. These people aren't dying anytime soon. Outside of Clarence Thomas, who, got sick, ain't nobody in threat of dying unless they unless some mysterious wave of deaths happen in the conservative side of the Supreme Court. These motherfuckers ain't going nowhere. So now they get to play and do whatever they want. Doesn't matter who's the president because, again, they could overrule the president. Biden wants to make an executive order that abortion should be legal in the United States. All somebody got to do is just call for a Supreme Court case to challenge that. They can make a ruling and say, nah, that's not cool. Strike that shit down. You seem to strike shit down recently in Supreme Court, so you know what can happen. You keep screaming, codify it, fine. Let's introduce a bill in Congress. And, somehow by miracle, you get Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin to go along with it so that you can get it passed through both corridors of Congress. State of Texas wants to argue against this. Well, you have a conservative majority in the Supreme Court. They can strike that shit down. Because again, Alita just set the precedent. It's not a constitutional right. So how could you fucking say that? All right, cool. That can strike down. Let's write an amendment. Miracles of miracles. You get 3 fucking fourths of the Senate to accept this. Somehow you are able to pull 25 Republicans to say, yeah, this should be a law, which, come on, that's not going to happen. That's cool. All right. Well, guess what? The next hurdle is, just because you said that this is an amendment in Congress, it doesn't become an actual amendment until about 3/4 of the states, 30-something plus states, ratify it in their state. Guess what, y'all? There's at least 26 red fucking states in this country. You think you're going to get Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi? Right now, Ohio's iffy. Georgia's iffy. Those are 2 states that are considered kind of purple. Arizona's iffy. It's purple. But you don't know if they're going to be able to get that shit, So Idaho, Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, Iowa, Kentucky, Tennessee. Think you gonna get any of them motherfuckers to join in enough to make this a fucking amendment? Get the fuck out of here. So what do you have now? You have a situation where, because in 2016, you motherfuckers had this stupid ass opinion and didn't like the woman in the pantsuit over and were pissy that the kindly old looking man who promised you a bunch of free shit that even if he became president, he wasn't guaranteed to give you, because that's not how government works. Just because Bernie becomes president don't mean that shit's going to become law. You all fucking took that ignorant stance. And now look where we're at. We're at a point where, it seems like I'm making an extreme conversation, but the fact that they're going to fucking try and do this, who knows? It's not set in stone yet. Miracles upon miracles can happen and they'll change their mind. But it looks like sometime during the summer, you're not going to be able to get abortions in over half of the states in the United States. And you're going to have this crazy turmoil that's going to reach a lot of poor and minority people, and devastate them. But because of this stupidity that you all insisted upon in 2016, you've set this country on the track to regress rapidly in a way that it has never done before. Just be thankful to God that we have amendments that ban slavery and that women's suffrage is existed. So at least you won't get super extremes. We won't go back to the cotton fields. They won't be denied the right to work and things like that and have to be barefoot and pregnant all the time. Even though they kind of will be resigned to the pregnancy thing, because hell, they could ban contraceptives. That's not a fucking right that was in the Constitution. birth control isn't the right. It's from what Alito said in this thing. Somebody could challenge that shit, you know? Hey, there's a lot of shit out there on the table that they could fucking tweak and fuck with to fuck you over. And all because Hillary's the same as Trump. Those emails, she's not burning. Congratulations, you idiots.
There was a lot there. I won't be able to all touch, but I do take your point. Yes, like you pointed out, Trump during his run got 3 nominees, and some of that is the dumb luck of the devil, I guess, combined with the consequence of the term limits that we have for these people. 3 I say nominees, 3 confirmations rather. They are on the fucking court. They're not just nominated. They're there. 3 that Hillary probably would have gotten, assuming all things held equal, and 3 that almost certainly wouldn't have been who they are. So that would have actually been pretty powerful if Democrats had gotten those 3 picks.
You had a liberal majority for at least a good 25 to maybe up to maybe 40, 50 years. You know what I mean?
Indeed. I don't tend to think of what could have been, but you know, as you're saying that's part of it. I was sitting there silently just thinking about, man, we could be, you know, obviously some things would have just happened, like the pandemic still would have rocked the world and all that stuff. I was like, God, I never saw Hillary as like super progressive or anything, but we could be in like a much further place socially had she gotten those 3 nominations. Maybe I'm overselling it. Maybe she would just pick somebody super moderate. I don't fucking know, but it would certainly be a lot different than where we are now. So there's that point. I will say briefly, because you mentioned the the unequal harm to, you know, minorities and whatnot, and that is true. I remember hearing somebody point that out, I think yesterday during a podcast. I won't say I rolled my eyes at it, but I kind of hesitated because I was like, I feel like that line gets used a lot. And I was like, in this particular case, I don't know that it's that useful, because if you don't give a shit about women at all, you definitely don't give a shit about Black women or, you know, women of color in particular. Like, so this to me felt like not the useful case to bring up that line. So I was like, yeah, if you're on the side of like, you know,
but it kind of
let's ignore some of the other stuff. If you're on the side of ignore women's autonomy, like, you're probably also in the camp of like, I don't care about race.
But it kind of is significant because minorities generally make up the larger percentages of people who are in the lower medium when it comes to pay. You know what I mean? And or like the value, like they're the poor. We constitute the majority of the poor. You know, yes, they're poor white people, but as a whole, if you take all the minorities that are poor together, they outweigh that. The majority of the wealth in this country still lies within the white community. So if Marjorie Taylor Greene gets pregnant and she don't want to have the baby, well, she already is in a place where she has the means to travel from Georgia, which would probably be one of those states that would ban abortion, and go to, say, like here, Maryland, Washington, D.C., whatever. Because that's what you're going to have to do. Because if these states, a lot of these states already have trigger laws to ban it anyway. And those that don't, they'll establish them. So, perfect example would be probably Georgia. Say you live in Georgia, and Georgia is banning it. You got to think South Carolina would probably do it too. unless there's a miracle reverse and and it goes from purple to blue. North Carolina will probably ban it too. Virginia, same thing. It depends on who's in office at the time. Right now, we got a fucking maniac Republican in office in Virginia. So, yeah, it's most likely. And shit, Maryland's kind of iffy too. With Larry Hogan, although Larry Hogan's not stupid, he knows that he's not going to risk his political standing because he knows he couldn't get away with it in Maryland. Maryland's much more bluer than people think. It's the people try to call it purple, but it's much more blue than you think. But okay, so you got Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, potentially Virginia. To your south, you got Florida, and we know where Florida is going to go on this. Let's be honest. That leads to your west. You got Arkansas, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma. To your northwest, you got Kentucky, Tennessee, and let's just throw in Iowa and Ohio for the sake that the way they are politically established right now, they're red enough to where they probably go. So at that point, your options are to come to Washington, D.C., Maryland, as your closest to your north. To your northwest, your closest would end up being probably Illinois or Michigan. To your west, because you don't know what New Mexico and Arizona is going to do either. You ain't getting Texas. Hell no. And Nevada spiffy too, so your guarantee is where you're at, California. So you got where I'm at in Maryland, you got where you're at, California, and you might got Michigan, like Michigan and Illinois. As a poor person, which one of those do you think is the most affordable to travel to get an abortion?
I think it's a moot point. I think the travel
exactly.
Even if you could afford to travel to any of those places, there is the consequence of the time taken off work, which lower income people normally can't take as easily. So it wouldn't matter.
And then think about something like Texas. Say you live in Texas. Remember, Texas set that law that if they find out, you had an abortion or somebody gave you an abortion, they could squeal on your ass.
Which other places might also enact. But to be clear, like I said, the point that it affects lower income people and people of color disproportionately is true. I'm not disregarding that. I guess I don't know if I'm thinking too much of like the political usefulness of it. Like maybe it helps in the sense that it will mobilize those people. I don't know. It just feels like it's weird because it is a factor in pretty much every issue you could talk about, right? Like any given social economic issue you could talk about, pretty much by definition, it will affect lower income people more than people who have the safety net of money. And as a consequence of that, it is used as a line very often in news coverage now. And I guess I start to wonder if it loses a little bit of the weight. Like, do people even hear you say it anymore? It just feels like an add-on as opposed to a fact that people really think about.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I think it also will trigger other things, like in the domino effect, because there's already issues with government assistance. Now, you're going to have more poor people having more kids, having to depend more on social services. And they already hate that shit anyway. Mm-hmm. So now you're going to trigger a bigger effect to try to figure out a way to get rid of these social services as quickly as possible. So remember, these aren't things that are inalienable rights. You know what I mean? As far as they're concerned, because it's not in the Constitution. Their laws, their rules, their regulations, the departments that were established by the government. But do we really need to keep them? Remember, they were trying to get rid of Social Security during the Bush era and privatize that shit.
I did not need to think of the domino effect.
So
there.
Yeah, it's just like, yo, who knows how fucking far? Because they're gonna complain. That's the thing. They do these stupid things, not thinking about the ramifications. Because, all right, you want to keep people from having abortions because whether it's a religious reason, like you feel like it's in the front against God, or you feel like it's hurting the birth rate in this country or whatever, you're gonna have a lot of kids that need to be fed by a lot of people who can't afford to feed them. Shit, most of us can't afford to feed ourselves right now in this age, especially after the pandemic. Because inflation has fucking gone crazy. Yo, in a grocery store the other day, and I saw like a pound of bacon was $10. Get the fuck out of here.
It's not, I guess in the long term, yes, the caring of the children that are born that otherwise wouldn't be is a long-term financial cost. But the act of the process of pregnancy in and of itself is not cheap there. Nope. So I'm sure just the hospital visits on those unwilling mothers could rack up plenty of
these programs like, Planned Parenthood and things like that they look at as just like these abortion chop shops and shit like that they want to get rid of. These things provide more than just abortions. They provide the free, like, prenatal care that people can't afford and things like that. And you're going to just look at it like, well, we're going to defund Planned Parenthood and get rid of them. We're going to get rid of these abortion clinics, which do different things. Another thing that a lot of people not thinking about is by banning abortions outright, you also ban the ability to enact an emergency care for women who've been raped. If I am having issues with my pregnancy and it looks like I'm going to end up having a miscarriage, well, do you know how they get rid of the fetus from a miscarriage? They use the same procedures that they do for abortion. But now that abortion is banned, the only way for women to have that fetus removed is naturally. And that shit is considered to be very, very painful and life-threatening. And it's also psychologically fucked up that you got to sit and wait to eject a dead fetus because it's against the law for somebody to go in and take it out. Unless, again, you have the means to travel to a place that is okay with that procedure being done. Like, there's certainly a lot of like long-term deep thought shit. But that's the thing. They're not thinking about any of these different factor scenarios or anything like that. All they know is fuck abortion. We don't think it's cool. Fuck it. They don't think about like long-term consequences, the things that, can occur and shit like that. All they know is they want what they want. And once they get what they want, they're satisfied. And if it causes a problem, well, that's just another problem for them to eradicate in some heavy-handed way.
Yeah, I guess as you referred to as well, the healthcare thing, the way they tore that down and they realized like, oh, we don't actually have a real plan. They just, and people have pointed this out about them for a long time. And I don't mean to make this, well, I was gonna say, I don't mean to make this about me bashing the Republicans or the political right, but fuck it, they deserve to be bashed. They have based their politics on really grievance and wrecking shit. That's why they're all worried about free speech, because they feel like they're being silenced, because Twitter one time put a little tag on a couple of Trump's tweets, and now he's being fucking silenced, having his throat stepped on. They feel like any slight addressing of racial history in America is an attack on the white youth of the country. They feel like any government assistance programs are sucking away the money of people who earned it. They really weaponize that grievance, and they have become a party that is just hell bent on destruction. I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic. I'm just saying, and we actually, even before like the pandemic, before that, like during Trump's era, we had this conversation where I was like, you know, when I was growing up, yeah, there was a bunch of religious psychos and people who jerk themselves off at the flag and pretend to love the military and all, you know, all that general pretending to be fiscally responsible Republican shit. And now it's like they just don't really have any actual goals other than just like breaking things. They're one, trolls. I should put this, like the younger group that come in, like the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Matt Gaetz, all those people, JD Vance. They're basically just like trolls in the image of Trump. But then you have like the older, more experienced, serious people who really just want to fucking make the country regress and are good at that and have been doing it for decades. Like they have, I'll put it this way. During the Democrat primaries for the general election, I said the one thing I liked about somebody like Bootyface there was that he talked about the future. You know, he had like a vision for the future, how things should be going. Like I said when he was talking, like we don't talk enough about the kind of things he's talking about, where we have a vision about where we want to go. We're just stuck in like what we're doing right now. I can't think of a time I've heard any of the Republican Party talk about where we should go, other than literally backwards to the good old days. You know what I mean?
Right.
The quote unquote good old days. It's like, it's sad, but like their entire support base support never noticed that they have no plans or interest for what we ought to do, merely what they don't want the libtards to cause.
Yeah, and it's funny to go back to like your point about how they weaponize different things, and you know, just have grievance. You know, they weaponize the whole grievance thing. Right now, they're weaponizing the leak, like saying how it's a travesty that this is being done in the Supreme Court, and how it's this big fucking whole like injustice to the Supreme Court by having information like this come out, and that this is just a disaster. And like it's just like, yo, you're treating this like this is fucking Hurricane Katrina. Like, and it's really not. You know, this wasn't your response to the emails of Hillary. You know, you had the Secretary of State's, you know, government information and private information put out there. You willingly put it out there. You had the fucking FBI director fucking tout that shit as a weapon. But this is just like, oh my God, this is a threat to the government and the, like, you know, the moral standing of the country. Oh my God, like, the fuck out of here, you fucking like hypocritical assholes. Like it. It's just it's mind numbing, but yeah. So we'll see. Again, most likely we won't hear like the final word on this until sometime during the summer. You know, I'm gonna be nice since this is our return. I'm gonna refrain from saying the like really nasty things that I want to say, and not like put out the wishes that I have. I might convey them to you privately, but just to get it off my chest. But who knows? Something may happen, like to make a change. I sincerely doubt it, but as it stands now, yeah, we're going down that deep dark path. Like, and I'm not gonna go at like all you people who didn't vote, but good job, Susan Collins, and um, what's the name of that lady in Alaska, McCluskey or whatever? Especially Susan Collins, though. I had to give her a hand for being one of the most like, or at least being willing to make herself look like one of the most naive people ever in Congress when she made the whole statement of like she was going to vote for Brett Kavanaugh because when he said that Roe versus Wade is basically, law and that he wouldn't vote to get rid of it, she believed him when he said that shit. Good, and that's why she voted for him. So, good job, stupid ass.
Sorry. Which reminds me, I don't know if I touched on it, but I probably have. We've been talking a while, but just in case, whoever that justice is that's always running his mouth about how the court should not be politicized and all that, because that was part of the reason they got all mad, which I'm not saying, leaks should be happening at the Supreme Court, but one of the complaints there was that, this further makes the court seem politicized. I'm like, stop saying that shit. It's been politicized for decades. That's been the decades.
I think it was John
it's always
Roberts who
politicized.
said that. Who John Roberts irks me.
But it's like, you went through a good amount of the history there, the last 10 years or so of the Supreme Court picks, right? Stretching back to what was his name? Obama's pick that got denied.
Merrick.
Yeah, Merrick Garland. Stretching back to that was a long time ago. Like I said, it was a decade ago.
It really has been. Goddamn.
Yeah, it would have been around 2012, right? So was it? Whatever it was, it's been about a decade.
This is about 8
this
years
game. They've been pushing this game for a long fucking time. I don't want to hear you run your mouth about trying to look like you're outside of the political arena. You're fucking not. And a big part of the reason that you're not is because you have lifetime, a lifetime appointment. So like that ship, I don't even want to say it has sailed. I want to say it was never fucking built. Stop lying to yourself about trying to maintain this air of, indifference to the political system. You're part of it. Sorry. Grow up. Stop believing in fairy tales. It's pathetic. You're too old to experience for this.
Yeah, you would think that this is like gaggle of old motherfuckers would realize that.
I mean, it would be nice if it were not so, but it is. Like, you can't pretend the world isn't as it is.
Yeah, no. Once, Mitch McConnell said what he said about Merrick Garland, it was over. That was the last thing. Like, that's when they stopped giving a fuck about like the intent. And it's funny because it comes full circle back to Alito's whole thing about the intent of the Constitution and shit like that. Isn't it funny how we get here because the intent of what the Supreme Court was had been lost with that decision that Mitch McConnell made when it came to Merrick Garland? I feel like that was the moment where the intent of government stopped being like, something people cared about, honestly. Because it was like, since that midterm election in 2012, when the Republicans took back over, it has been this like, rapid fucking descent into madness. Like, it's sad, but electing the black man has catapulted this country into this fucking like push to go back 150 years, at least, if not further.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't want to cast it as just like a backlash to that. I think the initial impetus was sort of a backlash to that, but also I think they were emboldened by the fact that they kept getting away with it. You know what I mean? Like there was a certain momentum that kept building up. Like once, Mitch can just boldly say whatever the fuck he wants, you could see the trajectory just skyrocket.
And I think that's why I put that as
a
moment. Like I say the Obama thing, but I do really believe that Mitch McConnell thing is the moment,
Right. Like, I think the lack of friction, more than them just being powered by the backlash, it's like the fact that they were succeeding. You understandably get a little drunk. It's like, well, why the fuck would you stop? You're winning, right? So like, of course, if you can dunk, if you can like leap 20 feet into the air and dunk, you're just gonna keep fucking doing that.
Yeah. Well, I think the better analogy is if I could fucking push you to the ground and lay the ball in, and you, no matter how much you complain or argue to the refs, they don't do anything about it. Well, I'm gonna just fucking keep pushing it to the ground until somebody finally says something. Then I'll go another route until somebody says something. And that's pretty much what they're doing. It's like they're pushing the limits until they get fucking resistance, and then they find another avenue, and until they get to a point where it's like now, like, well, we own the refs. That's the Supreme Court.
To your point about, I guess the benefit of them being disingenuous is like, yeah, they have infinite energy because they're just they have infinite motivation because they're not bound by things like being consistent or kind or reasonable or rational or anything. So they're always able to just find another route because why the fuck not?
Yeah, because they're backed by people who just don't. It's funny because they're backed by social media. Like people just change with whatever trend that they tell them is the trend, and they go along with it. Aren't you glad we're back to the press, y'all, people?
I mean, Blak stayed up extra late to depress you guys.
I know. God.
It's midnight for me, so that means it must be around 3.
My anxiety is going to be high going to sleep. Thank God. Like of this recording, we started on May the 4th, Star Wars Day. It is now Cinco de Mayo, so I have the pleasure of looking forward to tequila to drown my pain in tomorrow night. After I finish editing this and putting it up for you guys to see. So, oh God, it's fucking. I tell you. Anyway, you have any parting words for the people as we go off on this return episode? Come on, say something positive. Please.
Multiverse of Madness comes out this week.
Oh yeah,
that's literally the best
Chica
I got.
Is in the game.
Huh? Who was in what game?
A character from Multiverse of Madness, basically.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah.
Chica.
Well, I believe that's the character that everybody says is basically well, no, she's a Twitch streamer, but she's kind of decked out and kind of the America Chavez thing. It's kind of a coordinated thing.
The internet is weird.
Yeah, I know.
because like when I clicked to see who she was, because I figured like, oh, maybe she's the actress who played America Chavez.
Nah.
I was like, she's it. And I'm not, I'm not saying nothing negative about Twitch streamers. It just kind of surprised me that Twitch streamers had the level of celebrity to warrant such a thing. Good for them.
They already have Ninja in there, so hey.
I don't play, so I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, though there's another positive thing, I guess. The content creators, as they are called, are doing their thing. I always felt weird about that term.
Content creator, yeah, it's such a.
It just feels so weird and cringy.
Such a ubiquitous like term, because I mean, if I create a thumbnail, ain't I a concrete content creator? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I would argue anybody who makes any, like, you could just be somebody who draws pictures, that is content, right? Like,
right.
It always just seemed too vague to me. And I get that, people produce a lot of content. Maybe they don't want to say like, I stream on Twitch, I make YouTube videos, I make tutorials, like maybe they don't want to enumerate everything they do, but I've just always felt like content creator was just sort of a douchey term. No offense, douchebags. But yeah, like I said, I'm just gonna leave it on the positive. Multiverse of Madness is out this week. Marvel, it's funny, like a while back I said Marvel needs to do the X-Men shit to like pull us out of this funk we've been in. Like we need like
that's
one
gonna
big...
be. I don't want to see the X-Men shit. You know why? I don't want to see our future. Like, we may not be mutants, but Genosha's coming. You know what I mean? Like, Days of Future Past is coming. So no.
When I brought it up, I was saying sort of like Endgame. It's like we need some kind of big ass cultural thing to like pull us out of the malaise. So of course, now with this row thing that suddenly popped up the other day, I doubt that. I shouldn't say suddenly. It's been a thing for a while. Sorry, but I don't think Multiverse of Madness is going to do it by itself, but it's coming. Enjoy it. Watch Moon Knight. I don't know what to tell people.
Obi-Wan.
I didn't come prepared to be positive.
Yeah, I know. It's fine.
That wasn't part of my homework assignment. Positivity.
Anyway, thank you guys for watching, joining. I know you're not gonna watch no more because you're gonna be like, God damn it, these motherfuckers have just depressed me to no end, and I don't want to be bothered. But it's okay. It's cool. We can cry together. So come back again and we'll cry some more together. All right. So appreciate the love. Glad to be back. Hopefully we will see you soon the next time on the Reason Reborn, y'all. Peace.